Here's a question that sounds simple until you actually try to answer it. Why is anything funny? What is actually happening when something makes you laugh?
Because when you think about it, the things we find funny are strange. Someone slipping on a banana skin, an awkward silence that goes on too long, a word used completely out of context, an expectation set up and then completely demolished. Why does any of that produce laughter?
And here's what makes this genuinely interesting. Humor is universal. Every human culture throughout recorded history has had comedy, jokes, laughter. There are no known human societies without humor, which means, like language and music, it almost certainly evolved for a reason.
But the evolutionary purpose of humor is surprisingly contested, and the leading theories reveal something unexpected about how the brain processes the world and why comedy and discomfort are so often found in the same place.
Let's start with the neuroscience. What actually happens in the brain when something is funny?
Studies using neural imaging have identified a fairly consistent network of brain regions that activate during humor. The prefrontal cortex, involved in processing incongruity and resolving unexpected information. The limbic system, involved in emotional response and reward. And crucially, the nucleus accumbens, the same dopamine reward center that fires during frisson from music, during eating, during social bonding.
Laughter releases dopamine. It activates the brain's reward system, which means humor is, neurologically, a pleasurable experience in the same category as other pleasurable experiences. The brain is being rewarded for something.
But rewarded for what? This is where the theories get interesting.
The oldest and most influential theory of humor is incongruity theory, the idea that something is funny when something violates an expectation in a way that is resolved as non-threatening. You set up a pattern, you break it. The break is surprising, and then the brain resolves the surprise, understanding what happened, and the resolution is experienced as funny.
The philosopher Immanuel Kant described humor as the sudden transformation of a strained expectation into nothing, which is a very German way of saying the thing you were expecting didn't happen and somehow that's delightful.
But incongruity alone isn't enough. Not all violations of expectation are funny. A car crash is unexpected but not amusing. A medical diagnosis is surprising but not a punchline. Something else is required.
The additional ingredient, according to most theorists, is benign violation, a concept formalized by psychologists Peter McGraw and Caleb Warren, who propose that something is funny when it simultaneously violates a norm or expectation and is perceived as safe or benign, not a genuine threat.
Which is why slapstick comedy works. Someone falls over dramatically. That's a violation of normal physical expectations, and in reality could be a serious injury. But in a comedy context, we know they're fine. The violation is real, but the threat is canceled. And that combination, genuine norm violation, zero actual danger, is the sweet spot for humor.
It also explains why the same event can be funny or not funny depending on context and distance. A minor embarrassment happening to someone else at a safe social distance is funny. The same embarrassment happening to you right now is mortifying. Time creates the same distance. The thing that devastated you at the time becomes a great story a year later when the threat has dissolved. There's a classic formulation often attributed to the comedian Carol Burnett. Comedy is tragedy plus time. The tragedy is the norm violation. The time is what makes it benign.
Now, there's a second major theory that adds an important dimension: relief theory, associated with Sigmund Freud, who wrote a book called Jokes and Their Relation to the Unconscious in 1905. Freud's argument was that jokes allow us to express things that are normally suppressed, aggression, sexuality, taboo thoughts, in a socially acceptable way. The laughter is a release of the tension built up by suppression.
Freud's specific mechanisms have largely been discarded by modern psychology, but the underlying insight has survived. Humor does seem to function as a pressure valve for social tension. The awkward topic that nobody wants to address directly becomes manageable when it's approached through comedy. The thing that would cause offense as a direct statement becomes acceptable as a joke.
Dark humor, jokes about death, illness, tragedy, operates almost entirely in this space. It's not that people find death amusing in itself, it's that the joke creates a brief, controlled context in which the terror of death can be acknowledged and experienced without being overwhelming. The laughter is a release of a tension that couldn't otherwise be released.
Research by Ulrich Ott and colleagues found that people who appreciate dark humor tend to score higher on intelligence measures and lower on aggression and emotional disturbance. Dark humor in this reading isn't a sign of callousness, it's a sophisticated cognitive strategy for processing difficult realities.
There's also a social dimension to humor that's worth exploring, because most laughter doesn't happen at jokes, it happens in conversation.
The neuroscientist Robert Provine spent years studying laughter in natural social settings, not comedy clubs or television, but everyday conversations. And his finding was striking. The vast majority of laughter, around 80%, is not a response to anything particularly funny. It's a social lubricant, a signal of rapport, of connection, of being on the same wavelength as the person you're talking to.
People laugh at mildly pleasant observations, at nothing at all, at statements that aren't remotely humorous when transcribed. The laughter is communicating something about the relationship. I'm comfortable with you, I'm paying attention, I like you, rather than responding to comedy.
And crucially, Provine found that speakers laugh more than listeners. The person talking laughs at their own conversational comments far more than the person listening does, which suggests that laughter is partly about projecting warmth and openness as much as receiving something funny.
Laughter is also contagious in a very literal neurological sense. The brain has specific responses to the sound of laughter that prime it to laugh. Hearing laughter activates the premotor cortex, the region that prepares muscles for movement, including the facial muscles used in laughing. The brain starts preparing to laugh before you've even processed what's funny.
This is why laugh tracks on television work. Even though everyone knows they're artificial, they still nudge people toward laughing. And why laughter in a group spreads even when not everyone can hear the joke. The sound itself is the trigger.
Now, the evolutionary question. Why did laughter evolve? Why does it exist?
The most compelling theory comes from the primatologist and neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp, who identified laughter as an ancient mammalian system. Rats, he found, emit ultrasonic chirps during play, and when he mapped these chirps, they appeared to be functionally equivalent to laughter. The rats were doing something laughter-like when playing with each other and with humans who tickled them.
Panksepp's argument is that laughter evolved from play signals, the vocalizations that communicate to other animals that a physical interaction is play rather than aggression. You chase someone, you knock them over, you bite them lightly. All of these could be read as aggressive. The play signal says, this is safe, this is fun, we're not actually fighting.
In humans, this play signal became enormously elaborated. It extended beyond physical play to social play, to jokes, wit, banter, the whole ecosystem of verbal humor. But at its root, laughter is still saying the same thing it said when our ancestors were rolling around in the grass with their friends. This is safe. I'm not a threat. We're playing.
Which connects back to the benign violation theory. The thing that's funny is the thing that mimics a threat but isn't one. And the laughter signals, I got it, I understand it's play, I'm not alarmed. The laughter is both the processing of the non-threat and the signal to others that you've processed.
There's one more dimension worth mentioning: the relationship between humor and intelligence.
Multiple studies have found correlations between measures of cognitive ability and the capacity to produce and appreciate humor, particularly complex or abstract humor. Creating a good joke requires holding multiple frames of reference simultaneously, making unexpected connections, and managing timing. These are cognitively demanding operations.
There's research suggesting that humor is used as a signal of intelligence in mate selection, that people, particularly women rating potential partners, rate a sense of humor highly, and that what they're actually rating, at least in part, is the cognitive agility that humor requires.
Which gives humor an evolutionary function beyond social bonding. It may also be a display, a demonstration of mental flexibility and creative intelligence. The ability to be funny is, on this account, not trivial. It's showing your cognitive work.
So humor is a play signal, a social lubricant, a pressure valve for taboo and tension, a demonstration of intelligence, and a dopamine reward for successfully processing incongruity, all at once.
Which might be why it's so central to human life, why every culture has comedy, why people list a sense of humor among the qualities they most value in a friend, a partner, a colleague.
Humor isn't decoration, it's load-bearing.
That might be the best summary of this episode.
I thought so too.
Thank you for listening to The Why Behind Everything. If you've been enjoying the series, please subscribe on YouTube. It makes a real difference.
Next time, we're asking, why do we shake with fear? The physical trembling that happens when you're frightened or under extreme stress. It feels like weakness, like loss of control, but there's a very specific reason your body does it, and it's actually the opposite of weakness. The answer involves how muscles work, what happens when they're held under extreme tension, and why animals use the same response to recover from trauma in a way that humans have largely forgotten how to do.
See you then.